The enslaved man who was killed for a mango. Warning, what's ahead may make difficult listening. Slavery was a cruel practice, and absolute power over the lives of others meant that those with psychopathic tendencies could give them free rein with little fear of consequences. One Tortola planter in particular probably never dreamed that he would pay for his murders. Little is now known of the enslaved man called Prosper, who was one of several killed by his slave master, Arthur Hodge. We do know that Prosper died on 15th October 1807 as a result of the brutal whipping he received at Hodge's direction. His crime? He'd taken a mango from one of the trees on the plantation and couldn't pay for it. When Hodge found out, he ordered Prosper to be flogged, but also demanded payment of 6 shillings. When Prosper could not produce the shillings, Hodge had him laid down and flogged for more than an hour. The next day, Prosper was tied to a tree and whipped again. He died a few days later. But the cruelty meted out to Prosper wasn't unique. Arthur Hodge was a Tortolian who had been born on the island in 1763, the son of Arthur Hodge, a planter. Sent off to study in England, he eventually attended Oriel College, Oxford, and is later said to have briefly joined the army. Was he showing psychopathic tendencies even then? His father died, leaving him an estate in Bellevue, and Hodge, then around 40 years old, returned to the Virgin Islands in 1803. It is said that at the time of his return, there were around 100 enslaved people on the plantation. By the time he was hanged, he'd killed scores, and many others had run away. In fact, one enslaved man, Welcome, was sent out to recapture some runaways, but when he returned without them, Hodge had him whipped before sending him out again. Over the next several days, Welcome would return twice more empty-handed. Hodge had him whipped each time. After the 3rd time, Welcome died. One of Hodge's favorite ways of torturing his enslaved was to pour boiling water down their throats. His cook, Margaret, and Else, a washerwoman, were among those who died after being tortured in this way. Quote, "They lived some time after in a miserable condition, always complaining of their stomachs until their deaths, that they never got better, but died," said Perrine Georges at Hodge's trial. A boy, Samson, was dipped in a copper of boiling liquor at Hodge's orders. His skin was flayed off and he later died. How do we know all of these stories? Much of it comes from the testimony of Perrine Georges, described as a freed woman of color, who gave evidence for the prosecution at Hodge's trial. Hodge was arrested in 1811, 4 years after Prosper's death and the death of several others. We may never know how many lives might have been saved if Hodge had been stopped earlier. Perrine, who came to Hodge's Bellevue estate as an itinerant washerwoman, witnessed many of his cruelties, but we know little about her. She and the other 2 prosecution witnesses, who included a former manager at Bellevue, were convincing, and Hodge was found guilty. His lawyer had argued that Prosper was property, his life as valueless as a dog's, but even Hodge's fellow planters didn't support that argument. The jurors did recommend mercy, however, but Governor Hugh Elliot of the Leeward Islands, an abolitionist, had come to Tortola himself to see that justice was served. He had also summoned a Navy frigate to Tortola, declared a state of martial law, and called out the militia to ensure the peace after the trial and sentence. Appalled by the long list of Hodge's cruelties, he was in no mood to hear about mercy. Hodge was hanged behind the jail in Roadtown on 8th May, 1811. The Bellevue estate passed to his son, Henry Cecil Hodge. At emancipation in 1834, 27 enslaved people, 16 females and 11 males, received their nominal freedom. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the Vintage Caribbean content, please encourage others to like or follow the page.